What's going on, guys? JPS back for another video, and today we're going to be reacting to 3 American myths we don't believe anymore after living in Europe. Now, I don't even think it takes living in Europe for an American to have their eyes open to some of the myths and lies that they have been told as an American, one of them being that we are the best country in the world. In fact, I think it just takes a brief visit to Europe for people to see things for what they truly are. Life is not what you have been told it is in the United States. So let's get right into this and see what some of their takeaways are and what these 3 myths are. So yeah, here we go.
There are 3 beliefs about life in the U.S. that Americans, including us, tend to grow up with.
I think we didn't even realize the extent to how ingrained these ideas are in the psyche of Americans until after we left the U.S.
Yeah.
It's almost a little like brainwashing.
A little bit. But now that we live abroad in France, we realize that these almost universally held American beliefs aren't really so true. Hi, I'm Raina.
I'm Jason.
And we're Bag It Bound.
When you grow up in the U.S., you're surrounded by American flags. You recite the Pledge of Allegiance every day in school, right? And you're told both directly and indirectly all the time that the U.S. does everything the best. But then when you move somewhere else, for us it was France, you realize that lots of other places in the world actually do a little better.
Yeah, it sounds so ridiculous and egotistical, I know, but when you grow up in a country as big and as isolated from other countries as the US is, you just really genuinely don't know and haven't seen anything different.
Yeah.
Then when you do see those other places and you realize whoa, there's places where people have universal high quality healthcare and affordable education, and it's statistically much safer than the US. It really just shocks your American brain.
Yeah.
There's also this weird, pervasive belief that because the US is the greatest country on earth, if they haven't figured it out, probably no one has.
Yeah. This can include some really basic things, even basic water sanitation.
Yep.
We had friends and family that came and visited us here in France recently, and they had to ask if they could drink the water. They'd actually...
Let's talk about water, guys. Oh my. In the United States, I mean, if some of you guys have heard of Flint, Michigan, know about their water problems, but even locally, even myself, bro. The water is not always clean in the United States. I'm smiling while saying this, but it's actually terrible. It's just not, I don't know what is up with our sanitation or purification systems and techniques, but they're not good. You see tons of people buying bottled water and stuff in the grocery store, and I'm just thinking bro, that's so bad for the environment to buy 30 packs of water bottles, which more often than not, it's usually immigrants who are doing that because I'm assuming they didn't have clean water wherever they were coming from. That is anecdotal evidence, but every time I'm in the grocery store, when I see someone who's buying those, it's usually someone who is not originally from the United States, which is everyone in the United States, of course, but someone who's probably more recently, their family has immigrated to this country kind of thing. But guys, what I was going to say is the water in the United States, not universally good. It is iffy, very iffy, depending on where you are. I've had water problems, particles in the water, kind of with the yellowish hue. It's just not really good at all. So this is a fact, though. And then in the United States, if we're not doing something well, we just assume that everyone else is doing it. They're having challenges with that as well, which is just, it's not always the case. Public transportation is a great example. People are shocked to find out that there are lots of other countries with amazing public transport systems, and ours is just continuing to fall behind in some ways, especially when it comes to buses. Our buses are terrible, always late, never on time.
They could drink the water. They'd actually brought with them a whole set of advanced water purification equipment, and they were brushing their teeth with bottled water at first before we could talk to them and assure them the tap water is perfectly, perfectly safe.
France is another advanced country.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we thought this was actually even more funny
Yeah.
because Avion water from Avion, France sells in the US for like $5 a bottle. And so when you're in the US, you can drink French water, but not when you're in France. I don't know. Struck us as a little funny.
Yeah. Another commonly held American truism is that Americans are somehow just more free than people in other democracies. Even our national anthem, which we sing all the time, it includes the line, the land of the free, the home of the brave. But what does that land of the free actually mean?
Right.
What liberties exactly do people have in the U.S. that they don't have in so many other places around the world? Not long ago, we heard someone describe the difference in how Europeans and Americans view freedom. And it really struck home. It really captured the spirit of, I think, what we've observed here. I think that Americans want the freedom the freedom to carry a gun, to do what they want, when they want, to practice their religion openly, to choose how to spend all their money.
Yeah, and the contrast to that was the idea that Europeans are looking more, they see freedoms from. So freedom from the threat of violence, freedom from dying lack of due to health care, freedom from having a religion imposed on them, freedom from pollution and toxins in their environment and food. So, I don't know, we were talking about this concept of what American freedom is. Feels like it's become really extreme in the last few years.
Yeah.
Meaning in the US now, like certain groups expect their own personal freedoms to trump everything else, no matter the cost to society or their fellow Americans.
Yeah, and as an American, the intensity of this individualism, I think it can color how you view the policies of the other countries out there.
Definitely.
Because you don't always realize or have the context to realize that these policies, they might mean different forms of freedom and still make for a more stable, fair, open, and enjoyable society.
Yeah. So, lastly,
I think the biggest point about that, the freedom, is like, yes, everyone, like, this is the greatest example of this. Everyone in the United States has their own car. Freedom to go wherever you want, whenever you want, right? But when you look at traffic in the morning and evening commutes, almost everyone is in one car, one person per car. It's the stupidest thing ever. And they're big cars, SUVs sometimes. So that causes huge traffic jams because it's like everyone is pushing against the grain for their own personal freedom. What would be the contrary to this? I don't know, maybe everyone's riding a train together, or people are commuting together, carpooling. Like, that's carpooling would literally be a way for people to do that, to continue to drive cars while taking more cars off the road, because you can have 5 people in a car, but instead we're just driving with one person. Like, it makes 0 sense. So yes, we have, like, it looks like it's freedom. It's kind of an illusion. Like, we're able to go whenever we want, whenever we want, wherever we want, whenever we want, but we're not, because guess what? There's a traffic jam. It's going to take you 50 minutes to go 2 miles. So I think in the United States, the biggest myth is kind of the freedom, and it's more so an illusion of freedom in a lot of different ways. Like, a lot of people think that they have freedom, but you don't have freedom at all. You're just being told, and yes, you can own that thing or that, but it comes with enormous caveats that, if you had done things collectively and had less of an individualistic view of freedom and how we should run the country, then things would be a lot more smooth and people would genuinely be a lot more free and have true freedom.
Thing that has changed that we see differently now is quality of life and how we define it. In the US, when we lived there, versus now in France and Europe. When I was a kid in the US, my definition of like what quality of life or growing up and being able to have a good life was, it kind of revolved around how much money I could make when I grew up. That sounds embarrassingly materialistic, and it kind of is. But the honest thing is to be able to buy more, bigger, nicer, better things. It's just like a big focus of American culture. You see it on TV and movies and advertisements. So, I mean, that soaks in even when you're a kid. The house you can buy, the car you can drive, the size of the TV you have. If you buy your clothes or your candles from like certain shops, that all kind of paints a picture and defines if you have a good quality of life in U.S. culture.
Yeah, I think, and maybe in other words, being visibly wealthy is just a stand-in for quality of life in the U.S. Yeah. So I think American people will sometimes say that the quality of life is lower in Europe. And why? Because that's what you can see. Europeans tend to make less money, have lower incomes. They live in smaller houses, they have fewer cars, they have tiny refrigerators. There's often no clothes dryers. What kind of place is this?
See this video.
Yeah. But we've come to understand that Europeans tend to have, I think they tend to be wealthier than Americans in two really distinct ways.
In life.
That might be hard to see from the outside, but maybe, probably define quality of life better than a simple GDP number or, the number of seats in your SUV might capture. I think Europeans tend to have both more time and more peace of mind.
Yeah. I mean, I am not saying in any way that the French or Europeans in general they don't have worries, or they're like sitting around eating bonbons, or they never want to buy some, Air Jordans or an American-sized fridge.
Yeah.
None of that. But there's one really big difference, I think, that we've seen, and that is Europeans tend to have a value system around personal time and a social system that around basic human needs that support well-being.
Yeah, those two things, they come together for a quality of life that might be really hard to value on a graph or a balance sheet, the way you could, the stuff maybe in your house could be captured.
This is such a good point made by them, the visibility of wealth. And what does wealth even mean? Like they're saying in Europe, wealth is having time, freedom, ability to do what you want, a good work-life balance, and just being more happy and less stressed. But in the United States, wealth is it's money. It's money. It's like, and the craziest thing about this is anyone who gets a lot of money, anyone who has a lot of things, if they're driving a brand new Mercedes AMG, they've got $1 million home, this looks like success on the outside, but people are always complaining because that doesn't do anything for you. Like, wealth is cool. Having all these things are nice, like luxury goods, materialism. I'm sure it feels good, but these people always say that, like, at the end of the day, that doesn't make you happy. Like, money cannot buy happiness, and you're still gonna feel bad no matter what car you're in or how big your house is. Like, if anything, having a bigger house is just gonna make you feel more lonely, honestly. So, like, and people are always complaining too. More money, more problems. Like, they get more stress when they have more money. Everyone wants some of their money. People want them more for their money than they want them for them. So, like, the whole chasing the money and the status and all these things, it should not be the focus of life. But unfortunately, in the United States, it 100% is. And, people with these things definitely look down on people who don't have those things. There's like levels to society based on how much money you have. But what they're saying about Europe is how, that wealth it's not as visible. It's the smaller homes, living more collectively, larger taxes. People see these things and like, oh my God, like, I could never be rich in Europe. Like, what's the point in even living there? Like, they're all like, but at the same time, that just means that everyone, as a whole society, everyone in Europe is put up onto like that level of, having a solid life, being in a position to be happy, do things that you want, and not be too stressed about always working or always trying to buy the next thing and how you look to other people. Obviously, those things are always going to be there, but it's not the main focus or driver and purpose of life like it is in the United States. So I really like how they brought that up about how, some of these things are a lot less visible And many Americans won't even see that at all. We're so surface level over here, especially when it comes to viewing people's wealth and quality of life, because we don't even know what metrics can define that aside from money. So I really like the point they brought up here.
Stuff maybe in your house could be captured.
Yeah.
And what does those two things look like in France? There's just a deep respect for your free time to be able to spend with family and to do things for pleasure or maybe just intellectual interest.
Yeah.
This might mean that businesses are open for fewer hours, that work weeks are a little shorter, and workers generally get 5 weeks of vacation per year.
It's awesome.
And this all adds up to like more time for meals with family, more, access to high quality food. These are all things that are seen as essential parts of life.
Yeah.
I'm also not up at night worrying about how am I going to pay and buy my insulin? How am I going to pay for my daughter's education going forward?
So, again, it's not that life is easy, but there's a sense of ease and safety that I feel here in France that was just missing in the US. And this peace of mind feels worth way more than that overpriced Pottery Barn comforter ever did in the US.
Yeah, wealth as the US glamorizes it with more, and flashier stuff. It just doesn't look the same to me now. And overcoming the idea that no one anywhere does anything better than the US, that Americans are somehow freer, or that America is the only place to find a high quality of life. These are all just myths that living abroad has kind of dismantled for us.
Yeah. So, if you're hesitating to make the jump to live abroad, but it's your dream, don't let these internal beliefs that we as Americans kind of all get brainwashed into our whole lives, don't let that stop you. Because you know what? You're American. You're very optimistic. You can do anything. And sometimes that means moving. Thanks for watching.
A bientôt.
Oh, that was a banger. So glad we checked them out, guys. Baguette Bound. That's quite the channel name as well. Link to the video will be in description. Make sure you guys go show them some support. I really like the end there. And also, this has been on my mind recently. I know you guys know that. Moving to Europe in the future, it's quite the jump, but every time I watch a video like this, it just gets me more and more convinced. So I don't think I'll need much more convincing at this point. Just need to figure that out. But 3 American myths we don't believe anymore after living in Europe. Great video. I love all the points that they brought up. And I honestly, there should be a video where Americans just get their minds blown by what is overseas, because a lot of people don't even know what countries are in Europe and what are living there is like. I don't even know what living there is like fully. I've only just visited, and I would consider myself an enlightened American in the sense of knowing a little bit about Europe. So imagine it's like screaming outside. Imagine my fellow countrymen who know absolutely nothing about Europe. Jeez, I would love to see their reactions. So anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Hit that like button, hit subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.